Dua. Bindai mo dua. Bindai mo duango.
Oh,
Bindai mo duango.
Duangu means
I'm going to throw that boomerang.
I'm going to throw the boomerang.
Yeah.
Niranjan Wamala
Muurrbay Aboriginal Language and Culture Cooperative is an important and renowned language centre that has built a reputation in revitalising the local 7 Aboriginal languages in the region. Muurrbay is located in the Nambucca Valley of New South Wales. The team there have worked since 1986 with the elders, local cultural groups, education organisations and linguists to bring back languages that could have been lost forever. They have become the leading regional language centre. Muurrbay began in 1986 when Gumbaynggirr elders joined together to revive their language.
Well, there was no choice really, because we had a language. It was well recorded, well documented, and we had elders who could still speak. I remember the language when I was young, growing up, so it wasn't very hard for me to relearn. And things just went on from there.
Uncle Kenny Walker and brother Steve Morelli spent a great deal of time researching the language. They accessed old recordings of the language, analysed its grammar, and began the process of developing the first of the language dictionaries.
The language program was started by 5 elders that were out of country really when they started, because as you well know that there was a lot of shifting about of Aboriginal people in the early days, and these particular old people were shipped to Kempsey, and they were, I think when they started off they were in like a little church get-together group, but they started to realise that there were not too many more elders left. You probably had a dozen or so still left in the country, and they decided to revive the language and leave it for their children and their children's children.
From these gatherings and the research that was being conducted, the name Muurrbay was conceived. The language group believed that the name Muurrbay, the white fig tree, that is viewed as the tree of life and central to the Gumbaynggirr dreaming, was a proper name to give the language and culture group. The Language Centre moved to where they are now in Bellwood Road, Nambucca Heads, in around 1997.
This building was the original church with the reserve here. So it was they call it the Aboriginal Church. And at some stage the Catholic Church sold it off, but it was converted into a residence, and it came up for sale.
Muurrbay applied and was successful in becoming a registered training organisation, and they were offering Certificate 2 and Certificate 4 in Gumbaynggirr. In 2004, Muurrbay expanded their role to become a regional language centre. Due to their success at reviving Gumbaynggirr, they were asked to support 6 other language groups.
What's been happening over the years is that Muurrbay has worked with all the other languages, such as Dangati and Gatang and Banjalang, all the languages that we work with, all those other languages, on employing linguists who developed relationships with the people in those communities and then worked on putting together dictionaries and grammars for those languages. And this has been the real strength, I think, because they'd done it themselves and they knew what was involved, and then sharing that sort of knowledge of what you need to do to bring languages back. They've been doing it with the other languages.
As part of the Many Rivers project, Muurrbay provided strategic support in project planning, linguistics, IT and teaching expertise.
There are seven languages, so you've got Bunjalang, Yagal, Gumbanga, Dangari, then the Gatang speakers, which is Birpa, Warramai and Guringai, and then the Wanneroo Hunter River languages, and then Darkanyang, which is down in Wyong.
Gunde, Galgani, Wakaru.
We still function as a regional language centre. Many rivers as such has kind of disappeared. We had Gumbanga and then we had the regional. So the funding body said in the end, let's make it one statement. So we're a regional language centre.
We were first known as like the Dangati Titters, and it was a group mainly to do little short film clips of cultural activities so that it wouldn't be lost, that we could give it to the kids.
Who are these?
That's just an old photo of all the elders, some of the elders or family members up at Bellbrook. Yeah. Later, we changed the name to Nabu Bingai, which means older sister and older brothers. Lucky for us this year, we had funding, and we asked Muurrbay if they would auspite the money, because it's only a very little small group. We have a lot of elders in our Nabu Bingai, but we don't have a lot of active workers. Just a whole heap of things that Muurrbay used to, help and support us with, so it was really good.
We don't want him to be our king. The scared little partlot made straight to his nest, a hole in the side of the creek bank. The birds
Dallas Walker began classes with Muurrbay in the early days with his father and brother and sister.
Well, I started off as a student here first, and when I picked up the language, I became a teacher. So I consult anyone who wants to know anything about the language, pronunciations and all that, and I research a lot of our language, what parts we haven't got, what parts can we pick up that we, are still in archives. So we research that and hopefully bring that even more to the next dictionary.
He has made a lifetime career in teaching language and working with linguists like Anna Ash, Julie Long, Brother Steve and Mary Widwin to analyse, research and build on the structure of the language.
She would for to protect you from the
Galgan.
Galgan, is it?
Galgan, yeah.
Galgan.
In the 1970s, a linguist from Armidale, Diana Eads, travelled to Nambucca to record the elders who could still speak the language fluently.
Oh, Galgan Butterwhite,
Yeah.
that's right.
And Shields Junoi, that's small one.
Galgan Junoi,
Yeah.
small one. Oh, I see.
Those recordings have been an integral part of how the language has been revitalised, and recordings and written documents have informed the development of the dictionaries and grammars that are a major resource for learning and teaching the language. Language structure started to emerge. It was evident that a lot of work was needed to fully revive the language. Sometimes words had to be created using traditional forms to talk about new things and ideas. The complexities of the language have been worked out to help to teach the language.
Well, it's just so that the information is there, because when you're looking at language reclamation, it's actually very complicated. I mean, if you've got little bits of language from this tape recording and a little bit of language from that tape recording, you've got lists of words, but how do you put them together? And this is the mystery. When paleontologists, it always baffles me that somebody can go and pick a few bones up and then from that work out how the whole creature would look. And it's a little bit like this with languages, that linguists who work specifically on this kind of work are trained, as it were, to find how the bones fit together in a structure that sort of actually works.
It was all written and taped, recorded by a few linguists back in the 60s and early 70s. They'd travel up and down this coast, recording our languages from Central Coast all the way to Bundjalung territory. The manuscripts of Gerhard Lavers, he was back in the 1920s, early 30s, and we got them all from the archives of Canberra and Sydney Uni Library and all that.
In areas where the basic research has been completed and community members have shown an interest in learning their languages and further developing their resources, Muurrbay provides assistance. For example, Muurrbay linguist Julie Long travelled to Tari weekly for 18 months to teach a Certificate 3 in Katang. 10 students graduated from this in early 2017.
There was a guri standing on a hill, right?
Nice question, who was Yuladara?
Yeah, who was Yuladara? That's a good question. Who was he?
Michael Jarrett, who works for the Department of Education, has been mentoring, researching and teaching Gumbaynggirr for many years.
Kini gay ngujawan, nganyo di bijar Michael, ngayam Gumbaynggirr jamber bagabaganyer. Hello everyone, my name is Michael. I'm a Gumbaynggirr man from Nambaka Heads.
And then he come down to this beautiful part of the world.
In 1997, they started up the Cert 3. I'm an early childhood educator. I was working in the preschool next door to Muurrbay Language Centre and going to classes at Muurrbay. That's where I first got introduced to the language, the Muurrbay course. So when I first went back there, I did not know the full impact that the language would have on my life. So, there was a lot of people going back, learning their language back in 1997. So it was also fun to sit around with your people, your family and your cousins and friends and learn the language back at Muurrbay. And it was fun. When I was learning the language, I was asking the teachers, I'm teaching at a preschool, what would be the best way to teach early childhood children? So it was through song, so they teach me how to sing songs, head, shoulders, knees and toes and, all that stuff, row, row your boat, and just using simple commands. Sit down, stand up, come here, be quiet, stuff like that. With Julie Long, we started creating new resources, and Muurrbay was also creating resources, as well, because they were working in Barraville Central. So coming from Muurrbay Language Centre, learning my language, and also helping Muurrbay with resources. Now, what I do is I take that into my position that I've got now as a Gumbaynggirr Aboriginal language and cultural teacher. So those resources, and I still work with Muurrbay, but I also work for the Department of Education to meld the two together and train Aboriginal people to become Gumbaynggirr language and cultural tutors. And I support them, and Muurrbay supports me as well.
Muurrbay have produced a number of publications and in 2016 released the second grammar dictionary in Gumbaynggirr. Included in the publications have been the Jaeger, Darkanyang, Bundjalung and Gatang dictionaries and grammars, and a handbook of New South Wales languages.
It built on some of the stuff that Dallas and Brother Steve and I were working with. We learned quite a bit in going through those, through all those stories. We thought it would only take 6 months, and 5 years later we got it. Yes, and so some of the stuff that we learned in those stories we were able to put in the dictionary as well.
Muurrbay is the only language centre that in New South Wales that has really focused on doing the, encouraging and funding and supporting the basic research that's so vital as the first step in language reclamation. Once the dictionary is produced and the grammar and so on, so that people have something to work with, then it's much easier for people to take what's happened and run with it and then go on themselves to do language teaching and produce resources and so on.
Muurrbay is not just a place for language, it is also a place for culture and community.
I think the language part brought it home for me, knowing that I could come here and learn my language, which, you know, was the contrast to what this building was before. It was teaching us all the white ways, and now we're under the same roof as all the language and culture belongs to this country. But yeah, it makes you feel like you belong, knowing your language and your country. And, no, I feel very connected. Not that I never felt that way anyway.
When we started this revival program, it was people were starting to wake up and say, really, do we have a language that still exists? And the benefit of that now is all that process we went through, is that the benefit is shown in the children that we teach and in the adults we teach, because it gives them a self of pride and esteem in their self and their culture and their language that never existed before.
Absolutely. It has to be, you know, it can't be anything else. I mean, revitalising language, speaking the language, waking up country, you know. I think I said earlier on, like, when we're speaking the language, even though we may not be conscious, there's something going on there. There's something happening with people and country and people with themselves and people with each other. There's something going on there, and it is good. The team at Muurrbay contribute to many local and state projects that require language, cultural appropriateness and awareness. In 2016, the Clever Man series, featured on ABC TV, consulted with Muurrbay for translation of some of the script into Gumbaynggirr and Bundjalung.
People who were involved with Clever Man rang us up. They were working on this project, and he just wanted to highlight some of the Gumbaynggirr and Bundjalung languages. Because of the difficulty of languages, of translation that is, it was easy for us to work on it here. So in the main, it was Gumbaynggirr, and then little bits of Bundjalung thrown in.
Meal, math.
As part of the wider awareness of culture and language, Gary has been working with local ABC radio presenter Fiona Poole
And Marda.
I basically said we won't do any real lessons because, you know, listening, radio has short attention span, so just make it short and sweet and chatty and that kind of thing, yes. And it's worked very well.
They are continuing with producing language courses, and the Certificate 3 in Gumbaynggirr Language and Culture Maintenance was accredited by ASQA and is now being delivered on-site at Muurrbay. Teaching resources and language resources are growing, and the ongoing schools program is still being rolled out and well received in the local pre, primary and high schools.
There are digital things that are happening, and this is one of the things that we're looking at. And Mary and Dallas Walker's kind of doing a lot of work on it at the moment. And but it sounds good. It's like people standing in front of the camera and introducing themselves, and you've got a whole, it doesn't go too far into things, but it's generally speaking, people can look at it and people can, it's not too complicated.
We're creating two books. The first one has 3 stories in it, and it's the Rainbow Serpent, our totem story, and Muurrbay, which is Sugarloaf Mountain, one of the mountains over at Bellbrook. There's 6 stories all up, 3 stories in each book, and DVDs to go with them. So we've been creating animations. Frank McLeod, who is a brilliant artist, and he's been creating little animations so that we can put it into preschool.
As Uncle Kenny Walker said, work for language is never ending. Work is continuing on for Muurrbay, and their plans for the future are just as strong as they were in the past. Muurrbay is like that vessel, you know, that can carry the language from where it's come from to, you know, allow it and have it expressed now, but carry it into the future.
And my aspiration is to have at least 1,000 to 1,500 fluent speakers, you know, instead of saying hello in English, greeting a person all in language, and they haven't have to say a word in English.
Muurrbay is always looking for new ideas and new ways to go with revitalising language, maintaining language, and also teaching language. Muurrbay doesn't only teach language, it teaches about culture as well.
You know, Muurrbay is doing so much in recording and documenting and researching and just to continue to fill in all the gaps and pull all the threads together, and for that to continue happening. Yeah, it's just so vital. I mean, Muurrbay just holds such a vital place.
Why not now?